Chapter 19, Step 7. Humbly asked him to remove our shortcomings. The term humbly is placed in the beginning of the step. Again, humility develops as we are capable of building relationships with others. In Step 2, we ask for help. And in Step 3, we began to embrace our relationships with the outside world, being willing to receive help from others. A definition of humility that I use is a realistic appraisal of our limitations and assets that render us equal to others. Each of us has a vision of the world that is unique to us, and we have the ability to express that vision to others. The first word of the first step is we, and is set there because it is a source of success in our recovery from addictions. We build our relationship with others in association through the same personal commitment to change and the desire to halt our addictions. All the work that we have done in working the steps is there to remove the obstacles which stop us from embracing our relationships with others. Step 6 prepared us for the attitude of awareness and being teachable in our lives. Step 7 then unfolds into the next action step. The seventh step points directly to our concept of God and says, humbly ask God to remove these shortcomings. We are at a place of motivation towards change in our lives through all the work that we have done up to now. Our image that we have gotten so familiar with in addiction has pretty much been the same. In control or out of control, we remain the same. In recovery, we see that our lives and relationships are changing. Who we are changing into is unknown, and we rely upon the guidance from our higher power. The seventh-step prayer, my Creator, I am willing that you share all of me, good and bad. I pray that you now remove from me every single character defect, which stands in the way of my usefulness to you and my fellows. Grant me the strength as I go from here to do your bidding. Amen. Big Book of Alcoholics Anonymous, Into Action, page 76. This prayer is said in many ways for self-protection and guidance along the path that we have no control over. The need to be vulnerable, not knowing the outcome, is necessary that we may be flexible in allowing the design of our recovery to take a new direction. We are not pre-programming results. We are being open to what possibilities may come into our lives. We can no longer point the finger at others and use blame or resentments to cover up our tracks. We realize that it is our doing that brought about our own problems. So letting go of control of our relationships with others is a journey laid out before us. It is letting go of our past need to be in control and giving it over to a power greater than ourselves. We allow this force, a loving God of our understanding, to shape us into the person we are becoming. To live in the solution, I have to be willing to use positive characteristics of my assets to build a new life. I replace character defects with positive values that each one of us have. I begin to live in unconditional relationships based on the mutual realization that I am no greater and no less than any other individual. To live by the principle, do unto others as you would have them do unto you, is the goal in recovery. These are spiritual and moral aspirations. They are a direction that we are working toward. We can't work them perfectly, but by applying the principles to our lives, we improve the quality of our recovery. We have taken great strides to see how our actions have affected our lives. We have recognized that our character defects clearly have impacted our ability to develop intimacy in relationships. But now we go back to the initial fear of vulnerability. We wonder, if I remove the behavior, who will I be? There is a sense of entitlement associated with this behavior that goes deep in our roots. It has become a sense of identity for us. So, who are we becoming now? Rooting out the ingrained character defects leaves us feeling vulnerable, and without barriers between us and our more intimate relationships. We are seeing, for the first time or a long time, ourselves in unconditional relationships. Step 6 was a preparation for the action to be taken in Step 7. To deal with a character defect, we move from a disassociated state of the problem, which can be known as the subconscious. This effectively keeps us unaware of our behavior because we are doing it on an automatic basis. Have you ever been driving your car to go somewhere, and you automatically turn toward your work or location you often travel? Like a rut in my life, I can see myself going that direction. I can see my behavior, how often I'm doing it, and how often other people are doing that same character defect. At first, I am discouraged by the effects it is causing in my life and try to get rid of the behavior. But it comes back like a yo-yo in my life's actions. It again has become a habit in my life. So why is it so difficult to get rid of a character defect? It is simple to understand if we take the power away from a behavior and see it as a defense mechanism out of control. First of all, fear is the biggest trigger for a character defect to surface, being a defense. So when we try to get rid of a character defect, this triggers the character defect swinging back like a boomerang. In the 7th step, we build a network of support from our peers in recovery and a higher power to create a place of safety. The truth is it takes time for us to get to the point of deciding to change our behavior. I have seen myself become frustrated about repeating the same actions over and over again in my personal relationships. This inventory process causes a lot of stress as we start to change. We find that we're not doing it perfectly and become overly judgmental of ourselves. Having a new peer group that encourages healthy personal change is part of the necessary reality to change these behaviors. My old friends told me what I wanted to hear and co-sign my behavior. It takes a handful of real friends in recovery to help a person to make a major character defect change, or stop an addiction. I often find a lot of these friends in 12-step meetings. Doing an inventory of character defects, which we did in Step 6, along with a mere reflection of honest feedback we receive from friends in recovery, brings us to another moment of clarity in our lives. Once I am on a path to personal change, I get to a point that I call a superconscious state of awareness. This means I am right in the moment, right before I react to a character defect which I am trying to change. I either take another action which is based on my character assets, or I don't take any action at all. This is the personal choice we have in living in the here and now. In those moments when we're deciding not to allow a character defect to take over, we are adding to our continued experience in helping ourselves to create a different direction in our lives. The first few steps in changing our behavior are uncomfortable, and we feel awkward about it. When we see an opportunity for our character defect to come to the forefront of our mind, instead of acting on the old behavior, we stop it and simply do not engage in it. The interaction that prompted our desire to do the behavior continues, but we restrain from the behavior because we know we are only using this defense to establish a sense of control and to block the possibility of being hurt. We can change the interaction without the character defect. The byproduct of not engaging in the behavior or defect is that we begin to build intimacy and trust in our relationships. We become part of the process rather than an instrument of the relationship. These moments turn into days, and these days turn into weeks, and so on. As I break free from a character defect, the new me emerges, based on my strengthening character assets. We go through a grieving process of letting go of a character defect, the same as the loss of any relationship. This adjustment in our perception of self will continue to take time before we may start to feel comfortable with ourselves. Self-esteem grows as a direct result of my actions, based on how I conduct myself in relationships. This process is flexible to set guidelines that we use to monitor ourselves and others in personal relationships. These actions begin with rules that we set, such as 1. Setting expectations of how I should be acting in my relationships with others through the way that I conduct myself. For example, in a conversation that I'm having with someone, they remark that a comment or gesture I made was offensive to them, and they take one step back from me. I look at my behavior and apologize to them, which are met with approval, and they take one step closer. 2. Setting personal expectations of how I want other people to act in their relationship towards me. Defining boundaries in accordance. For example, if someone is disrespectful toward me, I will express that their actions were inappropriate and possibly end the conversation and leave. 3. My values in relationship with others and how they coincide with my spiritual belief system. Am I allowing my spiritual beliefs to be a flexible state of change? which allows me to expand my personal growth and remaining teachable with those around me. For example, a friend asked me to attend their church service with them. Although I may find conflict with some of the practices, I maintain an open mind, walking away with something of value for myself. When we are in an offender-controller character defect, we are having rigid expectations for those that we are victimizing as a result of our behavior. We have no expectations on our actions, thus feeling justified in controlling them. First of all, we must halt the controlling behavior. Next, for resolving the character defect, we build a realistic set of expectations for our actions, which bring our perception of who we are to a more equal level. The controller needs to be open to accountability for their actions by being open to listen to those they had harmed. In gaining input from those we have offended, we lessen the expectations we have of them. When both the controller and victim's needs are being communicated in an open and honest manner, their perceptions change to a more equal level. This may need to be processed in front of a counselor so that it can remain a safe environment for change to occur. The person in the victim character defect has rigid expectations and rules for their actions and no expectations and rules for their offender's actions. Of course, if the person is in physical danger, they may halt the immediate threat by removing themselves and seek help from professionals. It is common for the person to need to build self-esteem in order to take charge of their own lives before freeing themselves from their offender. This confidence is developed by lessening the rigid expectations we have for ourselves and demonstrating self-nurturing behaviors. This course of action is necessary to build a strong support system in recovery through using sponsors, counselors, and other mentors in 12-step recovery, especially if you are a woman. These support people should be of the same gender, because more women tend to get into victim relationships than men. By acknowledging that we have the same rights as others to make change, we open the door in standing up for ourselves. We then begin to place realistic expectations on those who have offended us, holding them accountable for their actions. We do this by developing realistic expectations, rules on how they should be treating us. And if they don't, we have a plan to get to safety. These factors are built from the basic principle, do unto others as they would have them do unto you. I am simply stating that this is the most logical and simplest explanation of how the program assists us in changing behavior. Isolator character defects being halted present a dilemma for those individuals. Building new relationships and activities with others to replace the isolating behavior is the goal. Activities to do with other people are sometimes similar, but you are sharing them with others. It can even be difficult for people who haven't developed casual conversation skills. But these skills are developed by trying them out. Playing board games or cards with friends in recovery can be an icebreaker for idle conversation. Taking a class at a community college can be another outlet for interacting with others in a study group. Another may be connecting with others through email, Facebook, or other social networks for interaction with family and friends, or joining a home group at a 12-step meeting. A home group is a 12-step meeting that you attend regularly, and it may include providing service work. Finding a hobby that you can do with others is another possibility. One may join a gym and have a workout partner. At first, we feel awkward in taking risks. That's why doing them with others who are also new in recovery can make things a little more comfortable. Self-esteem, the byproduct of our actions, is guided by our expectations in relationships. Don't forget that it is common for character defects to reoccur in our lives. Our worst character defects resurface when we are fearful. Social environments has a lot to do with our actions on this level. My conduct is perfectly acceptable if I surround myself with others who behave in the same way I do. Just think back to playgrounds and playmates. Hanging around the same friends and bars, I'm going to revert back to the same behavior. That's why we need to develop a peer group that comes from those 12-step meetings. We all share the same expectations of ourselves. I get smarter when I hang around other people who are acting smart about their lives. If I improve the quality of my lifestyle, the quantity of recovery will also last. Remember, by improving the quality of my life, I am getting closer to being able to have relationships with both parties having equal value. Once creating these unconditional relationships in 12-step meetings, I have gained the tools to build constructive relationships throughout my life. As said earlier, 12-step meeting's purpose is to become part of society again, not to create another. This step does not erase our individuality. We are addicts and we never get rid of that. We have a uniqueness of style of living that sets us apart from others. I call this creativity and inspiration of living. We not only appreciate our unique qualities, but the unique qualities others have in their relationship with us. My biggest fear in working on Step 7 that if I worked through my character defects, there wouldn't be anything left. I was afraid I might become just one big character defect. That wasn't the case. Without fear, in unconditional relationships, we not only embrace our newfound intimacy, but embrace life in general, and all it has to offer us on a daily basis. The process we are outlining is a simple lifestyle guide. We don't need to live up to anyone else's expectations or value system. We have our own. Most people are good, social-minded human beings, and we gradually drift towards making change once we become aware of the impact it has on ourselves and others. A woman once asked Benjamin Franklin how long it would take him to resolve all of his character defects. He didn't respond to her until the next night. At that time, he said, "I thought about your question. The answer I came up with was 35 years. He continued, "I think once I've completed the task of removing character defects, I would have to begin all over again working on an entire set of new character defects I would have acquired while working on the old ones." At this point, we can use the 7-step worksheet available at www.treatmentguide4u.com. In recognition that I have worked Step 7, it isn't the weight of removing all my character defects, but the understanding that I have the skill now to work through any character defects. They can always raise their ugly heads another time in our lives. The God of my understanding has lifted the burden of life of being a hostage in my relationships through my need to control or being controlled by others. I have the ability to choose today to either act in accordance to my values or in some case not act at all. These skills we have gained through Steps 6 and 7 give us the ability to warrant off potential relapse or in developing another type of addiction. They have been key skills in addressing issues of procrastination and other roadblocks that take action in our lives. The recipe for self-accountability is stating my ability to make change in myself and remaining teachable and accessible in my relationships with others. Having these new skills to my disposal, I then take the final steps to my freedom and personal realization through Steps 8 and Step 9.